Thanks so much, Raja. Really appreciate it. Good to see everyone. Impressed with Miranda, who's driving while paying attention. Please don't crash because of me. As I was telling Raja, we did a 1 million cups. Gosh, the last time was probably about 5 years ago when this was still really just in its infancy. And it was interesting to look back at the presentation we did back then compared to now. So this is going to be again very similar to the 1 million cups approach. Would certainly value feedback, and hopefully this will also have some takeaway value for each of the participants. As Raja said, I'm the founder of Parker Dewey, started the organization about 6 years ago to really address the challenges associated with college to career transition. We realized that the process wasn't working, and it wasn't working for students and companies alike. For college students or recent grads, if you didn't go to the quote unquote right school or have the right GPA or major, it was difficult to get access to that first job. And even if you were fortunate enough to go to a great program and have a major that sounds like a job title, how the hell do you know what you want to do when you graduate? You may think that you have to go to a big company and you're not considering opportunities with small companies. You think you want to do marketing, but do you want to do marketing analytics versus content versus PR versus so many other things? And companies were feeling the challenges also, that we're all recruiting from the same pools of talent, trying to compete against the big, well-known brands, trying to find people that are the right fits for our organization. And at the same time, we also all have projects that come up where we don't necessarily need someone full-time right now. And with that, we created this concept of the micro internship. So what is a micro internship? Micro internships are short-term paid professional projects completed by college students or recent graduates on behalf of busy professionals at companies. And just to unpack that a little bit, these are projects that don't take 10 weeks or multiple months. These aren't projects that you want someone to do next fall. These are projects that would take you typically 10 to 40 hours to complete. You need them done right now. So again, not something that you're thinking about for winter break, but it's projects that you need done right now. Projects that are appropriate for a college student or recent grad. So you can think about all of these. One of our clients called them the we shoulds and the I shouldn'ts. We should go write a blog article on a given topic. We should go update our social media. We should cleanse our customer contact list. Or the I shouldn'ts. I shouldn't be spending my Saturday morning doing a first draft of a presentation or cleansing data or any number of things. While these projects may not be the highest and best use of time for busy professionals, for college students and recent grads, they provide this valuable experience, this way to learn about different companies and industries, this way to build their resume, and also, again, make a couple of bucks. These projects pre-COVID, about 96, 97% of them took place remote. So you don't necessarily need students who are coming into the office. You're not worrying about where they're sitting. Obviously, in the COVID environment, that number has continued to increase. But this isn't some like newfangled COVID thing. This is something that we've proven over the past 6 years. And what's great is for companies, it provides really three different value propositions. One, the on-demand support. As I said, we all have those we should and I shouldn't projects, but it also provides a way to identify, engage, and assess people who you may want to bring in for the summer internship or the full-time role, both introducing them to your brand or your company, but also assessing if they're the right fit and giving them the chance to assess if you're the right fit. Again, we've all made bad hires where we realize the first week or the second week the fit's not right. The other nice thing about it is it's a great way to give back. And we're not talking about charitable contributions, but we're talking about providing real, authentic opportunities to those who might not otherwise have those opportunities. The first generation college student, the student who may have a lower GPA because he or she's working full-time or part-time while in school, students from your alma mater. Again, giving them real ways to get professional experience while also helping your business. As I said, everyone has these project needs, the we shoulds and the I shouldn'ts. We pulled together a simple checklist, sort of going through what these projects are and they're not. So these are not bet the company types of assignments. These are not things that require a whole bunch of onboarding or training. These are things that you can give to a college student or a recent grad and have confidence it's going to get done well. Again, think about the core skills that are honed in programs like Northampton, things like communication, problem solving, grit, attention to detail. These types of projects, again, require those skills. They don't necessarily require deep industry expertise or a comprehensive understanding of your customer base. These are projects that, again, are valuable and important, but they're not the best use of your time. So how does this whole thing work? Well, we tried to make it simple. Again, it was one of the things we experimented with from the get-go. How do we make this as simple as possible for busy professionals like yourself to use this? Because if it's going to take you 2 hours to use the platform and it would take you 5 hours to do yourself, you may not bother. So we wanted it to take under 5 minutes, and we wanted it to be really, really simple. Again, I'll go through this, but basically you post your project, students apply, you select who you want, and they do the work. Parker Dewey sits behind the scenes and facilitates all of it. So what that means is we are the employer of record, so you're not filling out W-2s or 1099s. The student is our employer contractor, so you have none of that liability. We have the platform so you can make it easy to post projects with a series of micro internships that are pre-scoped. We provide best practices, client support, et cetera, et cetera. So again, trying to make it as easy as possible. So simple to post projects. Again, I can share this link afterwards, but we have over the past 6 years really identified some of the most common popular projects and pre-scope them to make them simple. We typically suggest posting these projects 24 to 48 hours before you want to kick it off. So again, these aren't things that you need a ton of lead time. These are projects that come up that you're saying, uh-oh, I need to get this done for Monday and I have 27 other things on my plate. So again, we've made it really, really simple. Posting the projects themselves, again, really simple. Basically, what's the project, the description, how many hours you think it will take, and you set a price. It's a fixed fee. There's no back and forth negotiation. There's no bidding. You're not saying you're not paying hourly, so you don't have that issue of, gosh, why did it take the student 15 hours? I only thought it would take 10. Really, really simple. And as I said, if you use the project library, all of this stuff is pre-populated. What you can also do is limit it to specific schools or affiliations. So if you said, I really want to provide this to Northampton Community College students, you can limit it so those students are seeing the project and only those students. Again, great way to give back. Or you might say, I want to support my alma mater. I went to Northampton. Again, great ways to give back. Once those projects are posted, they go out to the full network. We have partnerships with over 400 plus colleges and universities across the US. Over 80% of students selected come from underrepresented backgrounds, which we love because it drives real equity in the process. And once the students see the project, they apply if they're interested. They'll see the description, what it's for. So we're looking for someone to research and draft an article, when the project starts and is due, the estimated hours and how much they'll be paid. And again, back to the mission, the student gets 90% of that fixed fee. So if you post a project for $300, the student sees it at $270. There's no additional costs or fees to companies or students. That 10% is break even for us. It basically covers our cost of having the student on our payroll and covers the cost of, again, all of the accounting and back office stuff to make it easy. And by the way, if you're working with the student and you really like him or her when the project's done and you want to hire them directly for a full-time role or a summer internship or anything else, go ahead. There's no other costs or fees. What's great also is we're able to, again, socialize these projects with students from, again, different populations, whether it's specific schools, whether it's Winning Edge, which is a nonprofit focused on diverse student athletes, et cetera, and also highlight the brand to students. As I said, the students apply. You'll see the profiles of the students, where they go to school, major, LinkedIn, resume, et cetera. You can also, as you can see from this box here, you can also set, again, preferences here. So maybe you don't want to limit it to just Northampton students, but you have a preference for them. You're able to, again, sort and filter by those preferences. Most importantly, you'll also see short answer responses to questions that you'll pose. Every project has at least one question, which is, why should we pick you? What we found is that question teases out a lot. So Miranda might write, I'm really interested in working on this project because of blah, 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 and I have a great background in whatever. Oh, great. Like that's a thoughtful, good answer versus Jeff, who writes, I go to Harvard and have some free time. You're not going to pick Jeff. That's a bad answer. Or the student who answers it and it's riddled with typos. Again, these short answer questions take less time than an interview, less time than reading a resume, and actually provide you with more insight. It also goes back to, again, how we level the playing field. Once you select the student, the work gets done. Again, you engage how you want. You want to have a Zoom call. You want to invite them into the office. You want to have a phone call. You want to just send an Excel file. Go ahead. Again, you do it however's easiest for you. The goal is to make your life easier and ensure the students have a great experience. We provide ongoing support. So again, making sure everything goes great. Part of the reason though, we have north of 98% success rate on these projects, meaning over 98% of these projects, the students exceed the expectations of the company, is the inherent motivation. So yeah, the student is getting the project done and is excited, but given that these are college students and recent grads, they want to exceed your expectations. They want to prove themselves. They want to have you as a reference down the road or potentially work for your organization. Also, when the project's done, you're able to provide feedback for that student. We don't share that publicly. So this is not Uber where you can see that someone's a 5-star versus a 1-star. Again, we want this feedback to be productive and useful for the student and to be insightful. We're also sharing that feedback with our university partner so that Northampton knows that Jeff is really good in timeliness, but his communication skills are subpar. Really, really important as you think about the coaching and mentoring that a program like Northampton can do. We're also able to provide organizations with impact reports, which look across all of the students that they work with, whether the demographics, what major, what matriculation, again, really providing them insights so it helps them with their campus recruiting strategies. And what we found is the impact is real. That if you look at all recent college grads, about 55% of them are unemployed upon graduation. And this is pre-COVID, and these are not my numbers. These are, again, undergrad or folks who are graduated, 45% unemployed. For those who complete micro internships, that number is less than 5%. And when you think about the student population, the fact that over 80% come from underrepresented populations, we're really, really proud of that. We're really proud of the fact that we see strong outcomes, not just from the projects themselves, but from long-term career pathways. We also find better retention. Again, 55% of recent college grads leave their first job within the first year. We found that students who complete micro internships, that number's less than 2%. So again, the students are using these projects not as a replacement for full-time roles, not as a replacement for university, but as a way to demonstrate skills and explore. What we're also finding is they're using these projects to really learn about different roles in different industries, working on projects in marketing or sales, trying to really learn about different opportunities. That way, when they take the right job or the full-time job, it's the right one. And letting companies also get to know students in different ways. A couple of facts, and again, I'll share this deck afterwards if folks have questions. Again, the short version is we tried to make it easy. All of the students are under NDA. You set the price of the project, no bidding, never any temp to perm fee. Students are on our books, et cetera, et cetera. And what we found is it has real sustainable impact. Now, some of these companies are big names. Again, companies like Microsoft and Pepsi, but we also see companies like M. Holland, which is a Chicago-based plastics company that talked about its challenges recruiting early career because students hadn't heard of it before and they didn't have the resources to go to all of the career fairs. Or even companies like Pepsi, which we think about as everyone knows Pepsi, but Pepsi has a major campus recruiting issue because college students think about it as a soda company, but they're not thinking about sales or marketing or strategy or tech roles there. Again, we're really seeing this level the playing field. So for each of you, again, what now? Think about those we should and I should in projects that you have on your plate. All of those things that there's not enough hours in a day for, or things that you're doing that just eat the highest and best use of your time. Give them to Northampton College students. They're excited to work on these. They're excited to give you the extra set of hands, and you might even find your next great employee. Thanks so much for the time and looking forward to any questions and feedback.
Jeffrey, thank you. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. Would you mind stop sharing your screen?
It's just about to find the button. Sorry.
So,
You would think I would know how to use Zoom by now. There we go.
So anyway, so while you are doing that, so folks, please start putting your questions on the chat box, and I'll monitor that for you. But I can start with a question here. So you said that what 70, almost 80 to 90% of what a company pays as for as part of the service that they that they get from the students are provided, that goes back to the students. And that 10% it just covers your break-even cost. But then in what other ways do you guys make money? So what's your revenue model looks like? Does an employer that engages with you, is there a fee that is associated with that service that you provide?
In the basic model, there are no other fees or costs. That's it. So we're trying to make this simple. With some of the bigger companies out there, there are additional costs and fees where we're running entire programs for them. And what I mean by that is, for instance, Pepsi, using the example from before, may say, we are really interested in targeting college sophomores from certain backgrounds who might originally from the California area, and we don't care where they go to school. We want to introduce our company to those college sophomores. We're able to run more comprehensive programs with those organizations that do have other fees, just because they're tied to us doing additional work behind the scenes. We've also done some really interesting things with university partners. So for instance, we've been doing sponsorship programs. So for instance, we could partner with a school like Northampton, where they may reach out to corporate partners and say, hey, for $10,000, we're going to give you an opportunity to engage 10 of our students in micro internships, in addition to featuring you on the Northampton micro internship page, in addition to all of these other services. In those cases, what we'll do is we'll do a revenue share with the schools, where again, a significant percentage still flows into the students' pockets, but we're able to generate additional revenue from those program management, if you will.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds fair. Got a question here from Paul Kramer. I'm always delighted to see questions from students. So he's an NCC engineering transfer student. So his question is, are there engineering micro internship on your platform? Can students attempt to recruit or make connections to your platform to develop more internship options?
Yes, 100%. And thank you so much for the question. And like you, I always love hearing from the students. Short version is yes, there are. What we find is a lot of the engineering projects aren't high stakes engineering projects, but they're rather projects that allow an engineering student to demonstrate skills and explore without a company, quote unquote, betting the company. So for instance, we've been doing a ton of work with a medical device company up in the Boston area called Smith and Nephew. And they worked with a ton of biomedical engineers and I guess mechanical engineers on a variety of projects. And what they were doing with the micro internships is things like patent analysis or technical documentation, projects that allowed an engineering student to apply those skills that they're learning in the classroom and demonstrate those skills without, again, the company, quote unquote, betting the company. So for students, it let them, again, demonstrate and explore, and let Smith Nephew get to know students that they might not otherwise be recruiting, but also assess people who they may want to bring in for the more traditional summer internship program.
Yeah, great. So as a follow-up to that, so let's say if a student, goes through Parker Dewey to get a micro internship at a specific company, but once they start working on that project, it works out really well for them, and they really want to convert that into a longer-term opportunity, and the company is also interested in that student. So at that stage, is that student still a Parker Dewey contractor or an employee, or that transfers the relationship?
No, it transfers. So we'll work with some companies where they may have a student do multiple projects for them, which is great. Again, back to the slide I showed where you could see multiple marketing projects with the sales one interspersed. We'll see a lot of that where a company may have a student do market research project, then a competitive analysis, then a social media, partially because these different projects come up. But in some cases, the company's also assessing the students in different skill sets because the skills required for a competitive analysis are different than those skills required to write a blog article. However, what we also see is the companies are using this as a way to recruit college students for full-time roles. So in those cases, the company will say, "Hey Jeff, we wanna hire you," and Jeff, the student, says, "Great, I want to be hired." Now off the platform, and we'll actually get calls from companies saying, "Okay, now what?" And say, "Congratulations, you hired them." I'm like, "Well, don't we owe you money? Don't like we owe you something?" No. Again, we're a mission-driven organization. I remember the first time it happened, one of the companies said, "Well, we normally pay recruiting firms 20% of the salary or whatever it was. So can we cut you a check for X thousand dollars?" We're like, "No, just give it to the college kid as a signing bonus." Like, and again, it goes back to the mission. This is a mission-oriented thing, and we want it to lead to full-time roles. If there's that mutual fit, we don't want to get in the way of it. We don't want a company saying, "Gosh, I was going to hire George, but I have to pay staffing firm 10 grand. Let me go look at someone else." Or instead of hiring David and paying him 60,000, I'm only going to pay him 50,000 because I have to pay us. Like, that goes against our mission. Sorry for the long-winded answer to the question, Raja.
Okay. No, not a problem. Um, Here's a question from Girish, which I think is, it's very relevant, which I'm also particularly interested in, with just the makeup of the group that we have
Yeah.
on our regular 1 million cup participants every morning. So you mentioned, and in your slide, we observe some, pretty, established organizations that you have worked with. What is your experience working with small businesses, let's say
Yeah.
10 employees or less?
Yep.
Because a lot of the folks that you see here in this call today, I'm not going to say everyone, but a majority of them, if they
Yeah.
own their own business or a startup, they either are working by themselves or they have 10 employees or less.
Yep.
Can you share your relationship, working with
100%.
that?
Yeah. Yeah. The only reason we have the big company names is candidly because most folks on these types of presentations wouldn't have heard of the smaller companies. When I look at the numbers, I'd say north of 50% of our clients are smaller businesses, less than 10 employees. Um, just to be, again, very direct, like that is a huge percentage of what we do. And then even with some of the bigger companies, so we were talking with someone, again, before the call started, from TD Bank. So we'll work with a busy professional from TD Bank who's doing it on his or her own, where it may not be a TD Bank initiative. It may just be Jeff from TD Bank has a project, let me post it and put it on my corporate card. But that said, we still have north of 50% of our clients are smaller companies, again, 10 employees or less or 20 employees or less. And what we found is this truly does level the playing field. It lets them compete for the same students as the Pepsis or as the Microsofts, because the reality is they're not competing. These aren't mutually exclusive, unlike a full-time role where a student is forced into a choice of, do I want to work at a small company or Microsoft? They don't have the context to know what the benefits are of working for a small company. So they defer to the brand they heard. In these micro internships, because they're not mutually exclusive, the student might say, "Oh, I was planning on taking a full-time finance role with Bethlehem Steel." Someone mentioned them before, but gosh, there's an interesting finance role with an interesting small business. Let me go do that micro internship and then realize, oh, like here's the benefits of the small business. That may actually be the right path for me when I'm taking my full-time role. One of the college students described it as dating. And at first I was a little like skeeved out by it because I'm old and happily married. But the point was a good one, that the summer internship is like getting engaged and the full-time role is like getting married. These micro internships are like going on dates. And because it's only a date, we find that it leads to more exploration by students. Students aren't betting their, again, full-time career. They're more willing to work on a project with a company they never heard of because it's not mutually exclusive with working on a project for a big company. And while they're doing that exploration, they can find out what it is they really like. And we have case study after case study of small company talking about how this helped them recruit students who wouldn't have otherwise given them a chance. So again, happy to share more on that. It's a great question.
Great, thank you. And by the way, as a full disclosure here, so Jeffrey, you can certainly elaborate on this further. Northampton Community College has a relationship with Parker Dewey, and I believe that we are, your firm is helping us, to find internships, for our students. Am I right on that?
100% right. And I included in the chat a link to the Northampton landing page. I think I showed you before some of the featured projects that are available for Northampton students. It's in the chat. You can click on that link and in less than 5 minutes, sort of scope out a micro internship. And again, it's made to be really, really easy. There's no cost, there's no obligations. You set the project. Once you select the Northampton student, then we invoice you for whatever you said is the price. We hold that in escrow until it's done. And I saw a question about how students report this. Students are typically 1099s of Parker Dewey itself. So we work with the students on all of that stuff. For the small companies here, you're not filling out any of those forms or dealing with it. We're working with the students directly to make it as easy as possible.
Yeah. Staying with the theme of small businesses here. So there are also a few folks, in this call here that are in the process of, they're working with a startup right now, meaning it's their idea. They're moving forward with that. So if a student decides to get a internship, let's say with a startup, will they be comfortable, let's say, signing an NDA?
All of the students are actually under NDA with every project we do. And the NDA has real teeth. And again, for the students here, this is like kicked out of school, transcript pulled kind of teeth, which is why in 6 years, there have been no issues with it. The students take this seriously. They know that this is the real world and they don't want to violate that NDA. And we're very, very direct about that. That said, the vast majority of projects that the students do aren't using particularly sensitive information. So even for the startup, the project the student might do is market research, where again, they're using public information to conduct it, or doing social media content or writing articles, stuff that's going to be out in the public domain anyway. But that said, all of the students are still under NDA. And if you feel more comfortable also asking the students to sign your own NDA, 100% fine. And we see some companies do that as well.
Yeah. A question from Rita here. So let's say if a job requires, the student to be present in person, then can a company or applicant sort by location of a company or position?
Yeah, we see a lot of that. So the company might be, back in my example before, the company might have an office in Philadelphia or be looking for someone who's originally from Philadelphia, but wants to engage students who are originally from there. Well, it's easy for the students who are at Temple or Drexel or the other Philadelphia-based schools. But what about the student who's originally from Bala Cynwyd, who's attending school at Boston University? This platform lets those companies specifically target and sort by those students. And in the same way, for the student who's originally from Bala Cynwyd and wants to return home, they're able to see those opportunities that way as well.
Yeah. Do you all also have experience working with nonprofits? So let's say if a nonprofit is looking for an internship.
We do. All of the micro internships are paid though. So just to be very, very transparent, these are all paid and paid fairly. But yes, we've worked with a number of nonprofits. And in fact, nonprofits find this to be a pretty effective way of getting some of the work done because they tend to be very thinly staffed relative to for-profit organizations. But also the recruits. So we've worked with nonprofits, big and small. I mean, World Economic Forum, Girl Scouts of America, and then also smaller ones across the board. And then we have some great partnerships with nonprofits like Bottom Line and Generation and the Dell Foundation, where we're not only working with their students, but they're also clients who are working with their students and other students on projects themselves.
Yeah. Jeffrey, I've got a few comments here on the chat, which, saying that, it sounds like a great service. that your organization is providing. What about some challenges, right? So what about some challenges that students and employers might face, and let's say they have to be prepared for?
Yeah. When I gave the presentation 5 years ago, the challenge was this whole concept of the micro internship didn't exist. So the challenges now are a little bit different. It's completely around how do we continue to scale? How do we continue to have more organizations ranging from small companies to big companies offering micro internships to college students and recent grads? It's really continued awareness. With regard to the process itself, I mean, look, there's always hiccups. But as I said, it happens less than 2% of the time. And I think we've done a really, really good job of making this easy and effective for students and companies alike. I think things like the project templates, I think the best practices that we shared, both with students and companies, I think we've done a really, really nice job removing those issues.
Yeah. What about competition? I know, I mean, I have looked around, I mean, probably not exactly like what you are doing, but there are other entities out there that are providing somewhat of a similar services when it comes to freelancing, internships or, project-based work. So where do you guys fit on that? Or are you kind of, are you kind of like leading the market in this effort right now?
Yeah, so we're leading it. I think it depends on how you look at the market. I mean, certainly companies like Upwork and Fiverr, which are gig economy marketplaces, have been around. And in fact, that's part of the reason we exist, is that we saw companies like Upwork, where work or project-based work gets outsourced, have proven the demand by professionals to get that type of immediate short-term professional project-based support. The difference is Upwork and Fiverr are really playing about geographic arbitrage. Let me send the work to the Philippines or Eastern Europe or India for pennies on the dollar, where again, it's a different quality, not necessarily because of location, but because of motivation. The freelancers on those platforms are doing it just to get paid and want to get the project done as quickly as possible and move on. What we did is we took acceptance of that freelance model and said, what if we applied it to college students? Can we drive better results for companies because of the inherent motivation of the college students, but also value from the optionality around hiring, that this lets us, again, go on those job dates? So yeah, we sort of kind of compete with them, but not really. It's a very different value proposition. In the college to career space, we're really the only ones. We've seen a few other folks sort of testing the waters and dipping their toe in, but I think they quickly realize that it's a tough market. And why it's tough is, and someone asked the question before about the revenue stream, it's tough because the various places where companies would normally generate profit, you can't do without creating a conflict of interest. So back to the temp to perm model. So we'll see companies try to do this and say, but then we're going to charge you 10 grand if you hire. Well, that's a conflict of interest. That takes money out of the students' pockets or the company's pockets, or disincentivizes hiring. So you don't do that. Or they say, we're going to charge a subscription fee. Well, that makes it inaccessible for small business owners. We've tried to, as a mission-oriented company, we try to do things that, again, make sure everyone's aligned, and we've been able to remove those points of friction.
Okay. So why don't we do this? So I'm going to let the audience, ask you questions directly, let's say for the next 10 minutes. So if you have a question, you can certainly raise your hand or unmute your mic. My only request is keep your questions short. I like to give as many people possible to ask questions. So George, I know that you have a question, regarding the students. When are the students getting paid? If you want to ask that question directly to Jeffrey, you can just unmute yourself and ask that.
Sure. Thanks, Raja. Yeah, I just wanted to know, as far as that 10% fee gets taken out, is that taken out regardless of whether the student completes the position, or is that kind of taken out of that escrow account maybe towards the end as the project's completed? Thanks.
Yeah, so the way it works, George, is you post your project, there's no cost. You see the students, there's no cost. You select Rita the work on your project, we invoice you for the $300 or whatever you set as the price. We hold that full amount in the escrow account. if there's an issue with the project and it doesn't get done, or there's any kind of a challenge, we'll follow up and say, George, do you want to pick someone else or do you want a refund? If you want to pick someone else, no problem. If you want a refund, we just send you back the full $300, no questions asked. When the project is done and done successfully, we just remit the $270 to Rita upon completion. Again, we're trying to make this easy and get rid of any surprises.
Thank you. Anybody else wants to ask a question, Derek? Yes, Rita.
So I want to clarify more on the question I asked about logistics. You discussed Philadelphia and the Philadelphia suburbs. So my follow-up question is, what areas do you cover? Do you just cover Eastern Pennsylvania?
No, we are a national organization and we've been national almost since the get-go. So for, again, I don't know which suburb you're in, but I'll pick on Bala Cynwyd since I worked there years ago. If you're a Bala Cynwyd company and you're trying to engage students who are from Bala Cynwyd or other places on the main line, irrespective of where they go to university, great, we can help with that. Here's a way to access the student who went to Penn State or Ohio State or UCLA or anywhere else.
Okay, because I actually have someone in mind that lives in the middle of this country that just earned an engineering degree and wants to do part-time stuff while he travels for a year. And this sounds like a perfect matchup for him. And I didn't know if you covered other areas. So that's why I asked.
No, we're across the US. And that's actually a really good point though, because it hits another question in here about matching the students to the opportunities. We stay out of that process. We're not trying to guess whether Matt is a good fit for X company or Y company. What we're trying to do is give Matt the platform to do the exploration on his own, to see the project that's offered by TD Bank and say, oh, I never thought about financial services, but that project looks interesting. Let's go work on it. Let's apply for it. Looks interesting. Or I thought I had to work for a big firm, but this project for the smaller company seems sort of intriguing. I'm going to raise my hand and apply for it. We want to encourage that type of exploration the same way we're trying to encourage the exploration by the companies. So for a company that thinks, oh yeah, we have a marketing role, I need a marketing major. Well, gosh, Tony might have been a philosophy major, but her answer to the question is really good and she has strong communication and writing skills. Let's give her a shot on this project. Maybe we actually don't need a marketing major. Again, we've essentially lowered the stakes to make exploration easier.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anybody else?
Hi, this is Renee.
Renee.
Jeffrey, I wanted to follow up on the question about converting into a longer-term relationship. And this relates to a nonprofit who is looking for an internship that they think could become maybe a year, year and a half type of project. Mm-hmm. But, you know, it might require some different skills. And so I'm wondering if we found a fit, if that organization found a fit, then does that longer term internship run through Parker Dewey, or does that then become a separate, is that almost like an employment?
Go ahead and bring them on directly. I mean, we've done things with companies where we've helped, but once it starts looking like a traditional summer internship or multi-year, like our suggestion is just bring them in. You already have the infrastructure. We don't need to get in the way of that.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
And again, there's no costs or fees, so we don't want to discourage that.
Okay. Jeffrey Scheck and then Girish.
Hey, Jeffrey, hi. I was curious about the types of conversations that you have with colleges introducing your program and your services to them. What are some of the questions that are asked by colleges? What are some of the answers you provide? And what are some of the maybe the challenges in creating a partnership with them for your services?
Yeah, so it's a great question. We actually don't do any outreach to colleges and universities. All of the 400 plus, with the exception of our first 3 when we first launched, all of the 400 plus have come to us. And we like that. We're not trying to sell them anything. So to your question specifically, they're trying to find the catch. They're trying to figure out, well, like, are you going to charge our students? Are you charging us? Like, there isn't a catch. So they try to figure out, like, where's the catch? The other question that comes up from a lot of schools is, well, I can just do this myself. Like, why do I need you? We can post these on Handshake or Simplicity, or we'll do our own system. And what a lot of those schools quickly figure out is it's not that simple. That Handshake isn't used by students in the way our platform is, or by companies. And then the infrastructure, setting up the project library and the templates, and even handling the payment processing and everything else is much more difficult than it should be. And they quickly realize there's zero downside to working with us. Plus, it expands the opportunity. So while Northampton obviously has a great network of employers, including y'all, this gives students access to y'all plus all of the other employers who are on the Parker Dewey platform. And in the same way, it obviously helps you build relationships with Northampton students, but you may have projects that you need done while Northampton is in the middle of finals week. Well, this lets you engage students from other schools where you may have a preference for Northampton, but gosh, if they're in the middle of finals week or there's just not the right student, you can then, with that single platform, engage someone who might be in the middle of the country. It
Gary?
truly is. And again, having, and I didn't share anything about this, like my background is actually as an investor in education and technology. I was doing it for about 20 years before starting this. And what I like about this space, and one of the reasons I was so excited to start Parker Dewey, is it's one of the few areas in all of education where you have these mutually aligned interests between all three of the stakeholders. The universities want to see their students graduate and get great jobs. The students want to graduate and get great jobs, and companies want to hire great students. And great isn't defined as salary. It's not defined as major GPA. It's defined as fit. And what we've done is we've created something that encourages all three of those stakeholders to drive the outcomes, and not in a way that adds additional cost or burden or friction to the other stakeholders. It's unusual in education to have that happen.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Girish, you have to unmute yourself.
Quick question, Jeff. You know, some of all these assignments and internships, micro internships, are project specific, project based. I assume. And how does the company that hires or you as the in between person handle things such as delays or changes in scope or scope creep? You know, let's say it's a 4-week assignment and suddenly the company wants more work done, or they change the entire complexity of the assignment.
Yeah, we have, and that's where our client success team will step in. So both when the project is scoped up front, I think through these templates and in general, we've done a really good job. We have a list of 100 prospects we want you to find information for. We want you to write an 800-word article, really well defining that scope out of the gate. If there is a change in scope, our client success team will follow up with the client. More often than not, the client either says, oh, I didn't realize that, or yeah, we want to make this bigger. Can we pay the student more if he or she's available? But it happens less than you would think. I think because the projects are so well defined out of the gate. It's not like a traditional consulting engagement where you're bringing Accenture in and things just spread out in their scope.
Right.
Like I think because these projects are short enough, you have less of that scope creep issue.
Okay.
Okay, we'll take one more last question. Anybody else? Stacy, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Jeff, I was just wondering, in terms of projects, how is your balance between people who have projects that want to get done and students that you have available? So is it that there are projects where there aren't the students to staff them, or you know, so you have way more projects than students, or vice versa, you have way more students than projects?
Yeah, we the constraint is always on the number of project side and has been since day one. There is never a shortage of students. We typically, again, 24 to 48 hours after posting, projects get filled. And again, by filled, I mean there is an ample number of applicants and candidates. Our biggest challenge is how do we get as many companies, as many organizations, as many busy professionals to offer these micro internships, and that's where we spend our time. And that's also why the partnerships with the universities are so important, because we're obviously doing everything we can to help the Northampton students get as many of these projects through our general outreach. But when individuals from the college itself are engaging professionals that want to give back, want to support, maybe they're alumni, maybe they're recruiters from that school, it creates more of those project opportunities for the Northampton students.
Yeah. Well, Jeffrey, thank you. I know that some of you still have questions, but I want to keep us on time here. And Jeffrey, I believe that you have put your contact information on the chat, and I don't believe that you'll mind if some of our participants contact you directly if they have any question. Is that okay with you?
100%. I already got some nice LinkedIn invites. Look
Okay.
at my ability to multitask, the beauty
Okay,
of
good.
ADD. Yeah, I dropped in my direct email. I also dropped in a link to some of those featured projects that we structured for Northampton. I mean, we've done thousands of these, so this is just a small sample of projects that are available. So let us know if there's other things, and we'll do whatever we can to be supportive.